Why do I keep getting running injuries? If you're one of those runners who seems to get injured every year or every 6 months, this is a good episode for you. So, we're going to be talking about a study I was reading earlier this week by Desai and colleagues, if I pronounced that correctly. They did a study in 2021 where they looked at 224 recreational runners. And when they say recreational runners, these guys were doing about 10 miles a week, about 15 kilometers a week on average. So very much kind of low mileage recreational runners, but they'd all been running for like longer than 5 years. So very, very typical recreational runners. Now they tracked them for 1 year. And if they reported any kind of injury, they did an assessment to see what that running related injury was. And then they included that in the analysis. And what they found is that about half of them got injured, which is really unsurprising and fits very nicely with a lot of other studies that have found that running injury rates seem to be about 50% for a runner for a group of runners with any given year. The way I see that to be a little bit easier to understand is to think, well, over the next 12 months, I've got a 50% chance of getting injured if I'm a recreational runner. And I've got a good chance of being injured 1 every 2 years, right? Which is a lot. And that's kind of quite a bit more than you would expect to see in other sports like, soccer and basketball and these kind of things. So running injuries are really prevalent, and reducing them is something that, we're all sort of aspiring to do. Now, when they looked at the different variables that were associated with an increased chance of these runners getting injured during that year, the only one that was significant was that if they had a previous running injury. So they didn't really find any association with like their weight or the shoes they were running in or their age or the amount of miles they were running or anything like that. The only thing that they found that correlated with the increased risk of getting a running injury was if they'd had another running injury previously. In fact, they found that if they'd been injured or if they'd had some kind of injury previously, they were twice as likely as a runner who hadn't been injured to get injured again in the subsequent year. And the interesting thing is that they weren't necessarily going to get that injury in the same place. So just because they injured their knee before, they were twice as likely to get any running injury. That means that they could have injured their shin or their left Achilles tendon or something like that. It wasn't just that they were always re-injuring the same thing. They were just more likely to get injured, full stop. Now, if you think about that for a second, that's quite interesting, because what it tells you is that they are doing something that is getting them injured. Not necessarily that they have like a bum knee that they keep flaring up, or that they have, some sort of biomechanical boogeyman that always seems to cause them problems. It's that they're doing something generally that's overstressing their body and getting them injured. Because it might be the same thing, it might be their knee again, or it might be a different part of their body. But the common thread here is that they just keep getting injured in some way. So what can we do about this? What can we take away from this and learn to inform us? Well, the first message to take away is if you get a running injury, you injured yourself. You injured yourself with your training, with your running. And that means that you're very likely to do it again. There's a good chance that you're going to injure yourself again. In fact, you're twice as likely to injure yourself again as someone who doesn't typically injure themselves. So if you injured yourself with the training, if you don't fix the training, you don't fix the problem, which means that history is doomed to repeat, and you're going to do the same thing again. And it doesn't matter whether it's going to be your knee or your shin or your Achilles or your foot or whatever, you're going to injure something again because you haven't fixed the root of the problem, which is the things you were doing. It's the training that you're doing that's getting you injured. So if you want to stop getting injured, you have to change something. You have to change the way you train. Now, not to be too preachy about this, because I am the poster child for injuring myself. Despite being a physiotherapist for, I don't know, about a decade at the time when I took up running, I got injured constantly for the first 5 years I was running. I was injured at least once in a major way every year, usually 2 or 3 times. Shin splints, knee pain, IT band was always the thing for me, plantar fascia, stress fracture, all sorts of stuff, right? Achilles tendinopathy on either side, once on one side, once on. I was basically exactly what they're describing in this study. I would most often get trouble with my knee, but it could be anywhere. every year and every 6 months, I would get some kind of injury. And it was because of what I was doing. It was my training that was causing my own injuries. Now, in spite of being injured, maybe 10 times in the first 5 years, in the last 5 years, I can think of one relatively significant injury, and it was pretty mild, to be honest. It wasn't major. It was a bit of a flare up of that IT band issue, but it was only one in the last 5 years, maybe the last 7 years. It's been a long time since I had a significant injury, in spite of at times, doing marathons, doing half Ironmans and this kind of thing. Now, that is not to say at all that I don't get pain sometimes and that I don't have to adapt my training, but that's precisely the point, is that my training is adaptive now and I'm able to modify it in response to what my body's telling me, so I can avoid a more significant injury that would actually put me out of training or put me out of a race. For example, I was out on my run this morning. I was doing a 45-minute run with a 15-minute fast finish, right, in zone 3. And for the second half of the run, I had green light pain in my left knee, and that IT band, the good old IT band was back. So for the second half, I could feel it. It was about a 3 out of 10, so we would call that like a green light pain. And it was staying the same. So it was constant. It wasn't getting any worse. It wasn't getting any better. It just stayed there for the second half in that kind of green light zone. Now, I can now use that information because I've reflected on it and I understand it. I can interpret it. I can now use that information to inform any adjustments I might want to make with my coach, Josh, who's my coach at the minute, in order to adjust my training going forward to avoid the injury or the issue from becoming more serious. And this is what I want to talk about, because this is how we avoid this cycle of getting injured every year, every 6 months or whatever. It's to fix the training. And this is how we do it. Remember, if you don't fix the training, you don't fix the problem. So the first step is to take a big step back and think, what do we need to do? We've got 3 things, okay? The first is that we have to learn and be able to understand the pain traffic lights, okay? So like I just said, the pain this morning, it was green light, okay? Anything from a 1 to a 3 or a 4 out of 10 on a pain scale, right? It's mild. It's not getting worse. It's not worse afterwards. Doesn't make you limp, right? Doesn't really bother you, but you can feel it. It's there. It's not nothing, right? It's not zero pain. It is there, but it's mild. That's green light. Green light means keep going. Other end of the spectrum, 8, 9, 10 out of 10 pain. It's bad pain. It's severe. It really hurts. It burns, right? It makes you limp. This kind of stuff. Okay, that's red light pain. Stop. Don't keep doing that. That's making it worse. It's not helping. Okay, orange light. Orange light pain is trickier. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean stop, but it doesn't mean that you can keep going regardless. Okay, it's proceed with caution, right? If you want to give it a pain score, you're thinking in the middle, right? 4, 5, 6 out of 10, right? It doesn't get any worse the more you do, but if you try and increase your training, it might start to move into the red. Orange means proceed with caution. It doesn't mean stop. Okay, that's what red light means. Orange means proceed with caution, but it doesn't mean go. It doesn't mean keep progressing your training. It means go slowly and be careful. So that's the first thing. All right, go back through the feed, through my YouTube channel, on the podcast, or whatever you're listening to this on. Find the episodes on the pain traffic lights. I talk about it all the time. You have to understand those and you have to be able to interpret the information in order to inform your own training. That's the first step. Okay, we're not talking about giving you just a plan that you can follow and say, do this and you'll never get injured. Like, that's stupid. It's not going to work, right? What we need to do is turn you into an adaptive runner, a runner who has the skills to train with your body and stay in the adaptive zone in spite of the challenges that are going to come up through the years. And the primary skill, the number one, is to be able to understand, interpret, and apply the pain traffic lights. Now, the second thing that we're going to do is track your pain. Okay, so after every workout, I go into my little app. Final Surge is the coaching app that we use at the minute. And the reason we chose that one is it has a really good pain reporting system. So I can track it and I can have all my athletes do the same thing. And we can all look at it and see exactly what is going on with any pain that you feel on any run. So if you're able to see the video, if you're able to toggle it on in the app that you're watching, you can see this is my pain report from the run this morning. And I'll describe it. So if you're just listening when you're out on a run or driving or whatever, you know what we're talking about. So on the screen, we can see my pain report from this morning. We've got a dude and his left knee has a green circle on it and it has a number 3 in it. And that's because the pain level was a 3 out of 10, right? Which is in the green light zone, as we just talked about. The pain was mild. The pain duration is recorded as well. It was from 50% until the end of the workout. So it started about halfway through the workout and then it lasted until the end. And then the trend was constant, means it wasn't getting worse. So it wasn't getting worse as the run continued, but it wasn't getting better either. Once it was there, just kind of stayed there, stayed in that green light zone until the end. And in the little notes section, I've written ITB because that's that's where I felt the pain. Now, this pain report, I'm going to now save in my, coaching app so that I can reflect back on it later. And the easiest way to do this is to just do a pain report whenever you feel any pain, and do it on whatever app you use. Like we use Final Surgeon when we get our runners to do it. We use the same thing so they can do it exactly like I've done it here. But if you use like a Garmin or an Apple Watch or some sort of coaching app like Nike or something, there's always going to be a place to put your notes. And you just go in there and you write, my left knee hurt in the IT band from halfway through until the end, it was green light. Like that's it. It doesn't have to be very sophisticated, but that means if you're seeing this pain worsen as time passes, you can reflect on like what it was doing in response to different runs, so you can then interpret that and make changes going forward. And if your app doesn't let you record any notes anywhere about your run, like get a different one, get a better one. So first, learn the pain traffic lights, right? Green, orange, and red, what does it mean? Second, track it. Anytime you feel any pain anywhere on a run, record it. Green, orange, or red. Was it getting worse? Was it staying the same? If it comes on later, right, latent pain, we have an episode on this, you can go and find it, right? That means you're going to record it for that run. So if I wake up tomorrow and I'm limping down the stairs because my left knee hurts, that's red light pain. So I'm going to go back to the run from today and I'm going to add a little note to say, actually, I got red light pain the following morning, okay, because that run caused it. So it's tracking the pain, but also tracking any latent pain that comes on later. Now, the third thing that we need to do in order to train in the adaptive zone is to dial in the 3 critical components, okay? And I talk about it on this show all the time. It's resilience, strength, and biomechanics in that order, right? So if we imagine a pyramid, we've got resilience across the bottom, we've got strength of the next level up, and form or biomechanics, that's the top, the smallest, okay? The most important and the biggest is resilience. Strength is the next most important, and biomechanics is the least important. So focus on the most boring thing first, right? The resilience. That's running is the rehab. That's your training load. How much are you running? How much more are you running this week compared to last? How much more are you running this month compared to last? How much faster are you running? How many interval sessions are you doing? How close together are they? What does your recovery look like? These are all the things where running becomes the rehab, or running becomes the thing that conditions your body to tolerate more running or more running training load over time. And if you get that right in the adaptive zone, not too much, not too little, then you'll be able to continue running as your body adapts. Your knee won't hurt, your Achilles won't hurt, whatever it is won't hurt. It will adapt to that training because you've titrated the training load within your adaptive zone and progressed it at the rate that you are adapting. So that's resilience. Then we have strength. Strength makes this all easier. Strength, when you're strong, when your muscles are strong, they can take the burden off the IT band. They can take the burden off the back of the kneecap. They can take the burden from the Achilles tendon or the plantar fascia, right? This is how we protect those structures, by making the muscles that support them strong and powerful in a very running specific way. So do your weights, do them at least twice a week, and make it heavy, okay? You shouldn't be able to do more than 8 reps, okay? Make it heavy, focus on power as well. We have lots of other episodes that talk about this stuff. And finally, and least importantly, biomechanics, although it gets the most airtime among runners and health professionals, shoes fits into this section, remember, okay? It is not unimportant, but it is usually not the most important, okay? But we're talking about fixing the form. So this is, if I was to take a 50,000 foot view, if we want to fix the biomechanics, okay, we're going to look at the way you're running, and we want to avoid having a low cadence. So if you have a step rate that's below 170, that's usually too low, but that's the case. You want to avoid overstriding. That's when you're landing with your foot too far out in front of you. I've got other episodes on that. I'm not going to go into too much detail. And you'll want to avoid knock knee running, okay? If your knees are brushing into each other when you're passing them as in mid stance, which is when your knees pass each other during the running cycle, then, you're knock knee running. Okay, that's indicative that you have some other problems, usually that you're getting excessive, what we call contralateral pelvic drop, or maybe your foot is collapsing in too much, right? I'm not going to go into all of this right now. but I have videos on my YouTube channel about it, and I have other episodes on the podcast about it. But essentially, you want to fix the form, dial in the biomechanics, and you know they're dialed in if you get a big fat tick for these three things. If your cadence is over 170, you're not overstriding and you're not knocking your knees together, your form is probably fine, and you should focus on the other things. They're more important anyway. Okay, so this is how we fix the training. We dial in the three critical components, we track your pain, and we understand our pain traffic lights. When we train like that, we become an adaptive runner. This is how you learn the skills to train with your body to be able to continue to run for the rest of your life and not get injured every year, every second year, every 6 months. And when you do get pain and you do get the occasional injury, like I've mentioned, it's mild, okay? It comes on, it goes away again. You can keep progressing, you can keep moving forward. These aren't things that are going to knock you off running and make you miss a whole season or make you give up running altogether because you're training within your adaptive zone. And these are all the things that we teach our runners inside our recovery and performance programs. And if you want our help to do these things so that you can set yourself on a path where you can keep running for the rest of your life and be one of those runners who's winning their age category in the 80 to 90 bracket in the local 10K or half marathon, obviously we'd love to help you do that and show you how to do these things in real time. But there's no secrets, right? I don't keep anything a secret. Everything that I do with our clients, I share in these podcasts and YouTube videos. So if you're thinking about working with us, it's just about implementing these things. It's about showing you exactly how to do these things for you and walking you through it for a period of 3 months or 6 months or 12 months or however long you think you need our help until you've learned it, and then you're good to go. And you might decide that you want to stay with us long term to have that accountability, to have someone to push you forward and take your training off your plate. Or you might decide, you know what, I know how to train now. I know how to train within my adaptive zone. I understand the three critical components and how to apply them. I have the good habits of tracking my pain and how it's behaving and using the pain traffic lights to interpret it and just my training going forwards, right? So it's about making you a more skillful runner, a more adaptive runner. So if you want help with that, as usual, the link is in the description. Just click that, book a call, and we'll have a chat. Cool.